Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daily Break on Trust Television, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. And it is a beautiful morning here. My name is Ayuba Ilia, and it's exciting to have you join us again for the show.
Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from our studios here in the nation's capital city. I am Zainab Bala.
It's a beautiful morning for us, even though we are waking up to yet another brazen attack by kidnappers, the second one in a week.
Simultaneously.
And one wonders, when you have such an attack back to back, then all that we have been saying about being proactive, what happens to that? Because it's along the same road. So are you saying that there was some kind of combing by military personnel using whether the fighter jets or the choppers or whatever means of that bush along that road?
So much questions, with regards to, confidence in Nigeria's government. A lot of people over time have lost confidence, and not losing, but have lost confidence in the government. And it's really sad if the government does not respond swiftly to this.
I mean, it's commendable, however, the response of some of the police officers that we saw, along that road, I would say rising up to the challenge, almost swiftly to respond to that attack, because from what we saw there, it was quite a very fresh attack. You could even still hear gunshots of some of the kidnappers there, but I think they need to be encouraged to do more. I think that there is need for them to be, given all that they need to move swiftly to do that. So whatever it is that is lacking, whoever is responsible for whatever, I think that it's no longer time, to drag the feet or to delay or to deploy whatever kind of gimmicks. It's very important that we face this thing headlong and deal with it, because like you mentioned, it's very important that Nigerians are confident about their government. It tells a lot, it does a lot to the whole issue about trust, in government and all of that. So, well, we'll be looking at that and more today on the show. Today we have quite a lot to look at as far as today in history, and that's what we'll be looking at right away.
quite a number of historical events, that happened in history on the 24th of November. Now, in 2012, fire breaks out in a clothing factory in Dakar. And in 1971, hijacking of Northwest Orient Airline 305, happened. Also in 1859, Charles Darwin's Origin of Species was published. And in 1874, Joseph Glidden receives a patent for barbed wire.
Historical facts there is something that you shouldn't miss. For every day on the show, we try to bring this to the fore, just as a reminder for us, as a people. Now, let's take a look at the dailies on Daybreak this morning. We have Sunday Michael in the studio, deputy business editor in the studio to review the stories with us here, but shortly after this reader.
But in a situation where you find that you look at the
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
All right, let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. You'd find on page 20, World Bank to Nigeria and fuel subsidy in 6 months. And on page 24, Nigerians can survive for more years under APC PDP governors. And the Daily Trust newspaper is leading with the story, federal government punctures Lagos NSAS panel report, identifies 10 loopholes. One of the writers says it's a triumph of fake news, no massacre at Lekki Tollgate. Another writer is saying we are awaiting committee's report, Lagos government. You'd also find federal government not legally bound by panel report. That's according to SAN. And you're going to see an infographic there which shows faults identified by federal government on Lagos and SARS panel report. You'd also find on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper, EFCC grills Fani Kayode for forgery. And on page 6, reps pass bill to end HND degree dichotomy. You'd also see we can't control cooking gas pricing. That's according to the federal government. Boko Haram forcing parents to withdraw children from schools. Niger government says 151,380 villagers displaced in 30 communities. These are some of the stories on the Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, now let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper this morning. And the first story there at the top above the pictorial. FG Lagos hashtag NSAS report recycled fake news. Tales by Moonlight. You'd find details of that story on page 2. EFCC arrest Fani Kayode over alleged medical document forgery. The lead story says doubts as FG plans to reimburse poor Nigerians cancel fuel subsidy. You'd also find the writers there saying petrol price to hover between 320 and 340 per litre. Also, El-Rufai states El-Rufai is saying that states will support total removal of fuel subsidy. NNPC GMD subsidy will be removed early 2022. Experts warn petrol equalization may truncate the regulation policy. Cash payment induces corruption. And also at the very bottom of the paper, you'd find the stories Senate deplores 6,000 feeding allowance of core members. Immigration yet to release orderlies seized international passport. ISWAP terrorists establish base in Niger border, says SSG. Service disruption trails protest against deplorable airport facilities. These are some of the stories on the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Okay, on the Nation newspaper, 2.3 trillion naira spent on cushioning COVID-19 effects. That's on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. APC Reconciliation Panel get 35 petitions. You'd also see federal government rejects Lagos NSAS panel report, says it's fake news, waste of taxpayers' money. You'd also see petrol to sell for 340 naira per litre next year, says Kyari. Labour cautions government against unilateral action. Another rider is stating 5,000 monthly stipend for 40 million Nigerians. These are some of the stories on the
All right. On the Punch newspaper this morning, the lead story, you would see the hashtag NSAS. Amnesty, others knock FG as lie rubbishes Lekki massacre report. You'd also find the writers there saying panel wasted taxpayers' money with a nonsensical report, says Lai Mohammed. There's general conclusion in Nigeria that minister is an unrepentant liar. That's according to rights activists. You'd also see at the very bottom, EFCC deepens orderlies 100 billion naira scam probe. NIS holds on to passport. My father never recovered from NDLEA ordeal. That's Babasue's son. DSS contests 20 billion naira fine on Igboho, says detainee undergoing extradition. Well, these are the stories, the major stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. Well, let's get perspectives to these stories. Again, welcome to the show, our reviewer, Mr. Sunday Michael. Now, let's get your thoughts. You know, the hashtag NSAS panel report is all over the place. Virtually all the papers have that story, you know, on their front page. The federal government, we are seeing its response for the first time since the leaking of that report. A lot of controversy here and there. People are saying this and that. We've seen even members of the committee to say, look, this report shouldn't have, you know, been leaked. You know, it's probably a draft, you know, from one of the, you know, drafts that they were doing. And it appears that we are taking it seriously, even the federal government.
Quite a number of interesting revelations. Yeah, so it's clear that what we see in the public domain is not the actual copy that went to government, not because the contents vary so much. So when you begin to say the report is not signed, obviously if you see a draft copy, it will not be signed. Only authorities like the Lagos state government can ascertain stuffs like that. However, there have been a number of contentious issues. The worry for me as a Nigerian is the multiple languages that seem to be coming even from the federal government, right? So the American Secretary of State come calling and you say you are waiting to see the outcome from other states so that you can harmonize views. And then additionally, the spokesperson of the president, which is basically the president talking to us, coming out to say whatever comes out of the report that is the responsibility of the federal government will be taken on by the federal government, and whatever is supposed to be within the purview or jurisdiction of the state governments will be taken. And then 24, 48 hours later, another government functionary who is the Minister of Information then comes out to rubbishes. So you begin to wonder, what's the meaning of these multiple communications coming from one source? You know, begin to pick hold. Well, whatever he has said seemed to have been in the public domain in the last 2-3 days. So basically the government just adopted what appears to be positions that people had put in the public domain to say, yes, for this XYZ reason, these are fake news. But, you know, experts have said it's a judicial panel of inquiry. It was legally constituted by a legal government. And so obviously you cannot rubbish the outcome of a judicial panel of inquiry and you know, and just discard it with the wave of fake news. That is too weighty. It calls the credibility of all the people who had served in this system to question. You may disagree with outcomes, you know, but to then put everything in the annals of in the trash, as if to say the work that had gone into these places were complete waste, is where some of us find very harsh, whatever that response is. But what cannot be discarded is that there are gray areas in the report, but I don't think it completely rubbishes the findings of the report. I think we could still find very useful, because some of the things the committee reports are recommending are not anything special other than apologize to the family who have suffered this loss, or even pay compensation. We know people suffer loss, whether directly at the scene of the shooting or as a consequence of the events of October 20. The shops that were looted in Lekki, the jewelry shops and all of that, were because of the anger that sprouted from what appeared to be a shooting. And that led to the attack even on the media houses like TVC. The media also had its own fair share of those attacks. Those are properties that were lost, not because the guys participated directly at it, but because it was a vicarious liability as a result of the action that happened there. And they are a member of this society. They deserve some level of compensation. So we cannot discard those kind of recommendations, because there are other aspects of the recommendations that we don't like.
Okay. Now, one of the writers, on the Daily Trust newspaper, in regards to that, says federal government not legally bound by panel report.
Yeah. So there are two things. If you recall the Oputa panel report, some very strong persons in these countries were summoned, and they didn't show up, and they went to court instead. And the pronouncement of the court was that because it was a federal government constituted panel, it wasn't binded by the states, except if they were set up in the state and they were sitting in those states. And in fact, the things they did within the states are not legally binding. So if you extract that pronouncement into this, because this was set up by Lagos State government to act on an action that happened within Lagos State, the Lagos State government does not have the authority, for instance, to pronounce any punishment on the army, because it's a federal institution. And this committee or panel was not set up by the federal government that has jurisdiction over federal agencies. So to a large extent, what we are likely to see, if the white paper report, which will be like a recommendation of what the government will do, comes out, it will be around what the state government can do. At best, they can only recommend to the federal government what they think would be appropriate on the part of the federal government. So to that extent, you can say, yes, it's not binding on the federal government, but we are all part of the same country. Whatever is good for Nigerians in Lagos State, I think should something the federal government want to take a step.
All right. Now, looking at our track record in Nigeria with committees, panels, and all of that, this is not the first of the panels that we've seen in Nigeria's history. And how important, is the response of government to panel reports to the confidence of Nigerians? Whenever government says, okay, we are setting up a committee to investigate, we are setting up a panel to look into this or that. Recall that when even the federal government came out to say, look, we have heard you loud and clear during the NSAS, protests and all that. We've heard you loud and clear. We are going to take actions on this. A committee is going to be set up to look into this. The protesters were skeptical about leaving the streets, which is to say that the words of the government doesn't hold water. With this happening, going forward, how would this tell, on, the idea about setting up committees for investigation on issues?
I have been in 2-3 other meetings that has tried to put the whole conversation in context. The truth of the matter is that there is little or no confidence about government committees. And I would advance this argument even with the reaction of a senior advocate of Nigeria who is a member of the panel, Adegborua. Adegborua himself said that it is not right to describe the activities of the committee as a waste of time. However, he doesn't think the effort of the committee will see the light of the day. He expressed the same fears himself. So basically what he meant was, we had to do this because duty calls. We want to put something in the annals of history but that is all that there will be to it. It would not see the light of the day. And he gave instances, and those instances are readily in the public domain. Where is the recommendations? Where is the effort around, let's say, the Oransawe committee that said we are spending so much, which will harmonize agencies that seem to be doing the same thing? It's been in the trash can. What have we done with the Okuta panel recommendation? It's been in the trash can. The 2014 confab that was supposed to unite us as a country, maybe not address all the issues, but made far-reaching recommendations about how certain things needed to be done, is in the trash can. The government has become an expert, in setting up committee, wasting everybody's time, and trashing the outcomes of those committees. So if another person comes and an agitation continues, he sets up another committee that ends up replicating what has been said 5-10 years ago, and then we trash them. We never seem to learn. If you recall, we are where we are today as far as security is concerned, for instance, because people wrote reports that were never read. People made recommendations to government that were never taken seriously until what happened? What was a small sect of 5-10 people meeting in places and preaching ideologies that were dangerous, metamorphosized into an elephant in the room. And today, we don't even know what to do with it. There were reports, there were evidence that reports were made to appropriate quarters that were never acted upon. So we seem to have a culture of really never taking these things, or we deliberately set these committees up to fail, as it were. I think we just respond to public outcry to set up committees. And okay, let us even leave the panel report. What about the ones that the government themselves established? At least we did a report and several other people, and the government confirmed that a number of police personnel lost their life in the entrance. What has happened to the family of those personnel? They said they were coming up with SWAT. Have you seen SWAT anywhere on the streets? Those were their own recommendations. They said things they themselves wanted to do to pacify you. What have you seen? Everything was in the heat of the moment, and today we are talking about 2023.
Okay. Another story of interest to me on the Daily Trust newspaper is a story about Boko Haram forcing parents to withdraw children from schools. That's according to the Niger government. And we're seeing this as another attack, just recently happened on the Abuja-Kaduna highway simultaneously. What are your thoughts about this?
We were just mentioning before we came live that some of us had engagements that would require us to go through that road, and today we are putting off. That is even a social engagement. I am sure it will be the same line of decision for people who conduct businesses across these two locations. What is even becoming dangerous is this federal government seeming silent on everything that is happening in Niger. The Niger thing has continued to escalate in the last 2 years. Killing here, picking there. Today, 6 local governments, critical local government, about 4 or 5 of them are adjoining Kaduna. So you can see where there is a massive force. Because, of course, if you shell in Kaduna, they will run into other places and regroup. And these are all vulnerable spots. But the most painful revelation now is they are coming as far as Lapai. Lapai is just a few distance away from the federal capital. It's a strategic logistic route for trailers and tankers that go to the west, either evacuate fuel or other critical food supplies to both the nation's capital and other parts of the country. And we are watching these things creeping gradually. The painful part is the Kaduna road. The same spot, 3 days. They come out at a particular time, hold. In fact, testimonies, suggest that this operation go on for as long as an hour without response. The videos we saw purportedly were coming from security personnel that were escorting apparently a VIP that needed to respond. It wasn't because we have created any kind of sustained attack on these people to wake them up. And every time these guys come out and they succeed, it's become an impetus to even do more. It's not enough to say, then you see the government saying we have repelled attacks on it. What do you call repel? People group to carry havoc. You come, you shoot to the air, they run into the bush, and then you count that as a success. What happens to combing, to going after these people and flushing them out, in the real sense, rather than just show up, do some show of force, and then they excuse you, which is the wise thing to do. He who fights and run away lives to fight another day. You know.
All right. Well, very interesting stories, really. We hear about, federal government talking about removing subsidy, by next year. It's also another story that surfaced here. And we also see another one saying, federal government saying that they cannot control the price of cooking gas. Yesterday, we saw in the United States, President Joe Biden took some emergency steps, to control, the pricing of energy over there. What do we need to do differently? I mean, we've been on this for quite a while. And if government is saying that they cannot even control the price of gas, what do? We should keep on buying as it is.
As a student of communication, I know how important positive communication is, especially from leadership. The only instrument you and I anchor on is hope. And so if people claim to lead us, they cannot at any point in time communicate as though the situation is helpless. No situation is completely helpless if you are willing to act as a leader. So what do you mean by there is nothing you can do about the price of cooking gas and you are a gas producing? You are not just a gas producing nation, you are one of the top gas producing nations in the world. What do you mean? What kind of confidence do you want your citizens to draw from that? Have you sat down and done your maths and imagine what 2022 would look like? Increase electricity costs. Today you are buying a cooking gas from 4,000 to 10,000. Likely you are going to buy petrol for 340 naira per liter. And remember that part of your energy needs in your house are supplied by your generator. And so what should have given you 2 or 3 liters today would give you just about a liter. And transport costs will go up. Food prices have surged beyond imagination. Breads are now selling for 700 as against 400 naira. If you accumulate all of these costs and you are looking at minimum wage that has refused to take you home, what is the plight of the average home? We are talking about increased hunger, stunting for children who cannot get proper food. Some families will respond by even removing children from school and say, if we can feed you, we have done the best for you. We can't do beyond this. Those are the consequences. And then we come out and communicate these things like it really doesn't matter. Look at the issue of subsidy. Yeah, the manner in which we have subsidies today are riddled with corruptions. Given. But what is this response about sharing 5,000 for 40 million people? Do we even have a social register that suggests that one or two persons are poor and the other persons are not? Is that even sustainable? So how can you be running from subsidy and be talking about palliatives that we know have never been shared fairly in this country? What happens to providing a transport system that provides opportunity for everyone to ride on? So what happens to the Abuja mass transit bus, for instance? I don't see them on the road anymore. What happens to resurrecting stuff like that from those kind of channels you can then, properly put out subsidies, like because you have provided mass transit buses that are competing with every form of transport, where you should go with 1,000 naira, you probably go with 100 naira. That makes sense. Rather than all the social sharing program you have run have come under massive corruption and massive transparency issues, and then you are instituting 5,000 naira for 40 million people is 200 billion naira per month. That was 1.4 trillion naira annually. Are we not back to the same thing? Mm-hmm. So it sometimes it beats your imagination whether people even sit and think about these things before they bring them out in the public domain. We are saying this basket you are spending on what you call subsidy that we don't understand is too much. And then you come up with another name and redesign the sharing of that money in another formula. When we are saying hospitals are becoming expensive, there are no drugs in the shelves, people are even withdrawing from public schools to private schools because it's completely in a state of comatose. Rather than pump money to those things that can impact everybody, they're sharing 40 million to 40 million faceless people. That's crazy.
Very sad, really. Well, quite a lot of stories that we have today. Now we hear also another story about Fani Kayode being picked by the EFCC. Again, it's like this has happened before a couple of times, and then somehow we hear that nothing happens at the end of the day. Why do we go this round all the time?
Nigeria is an interesting debacle. So today the EFCC is saying the documents he provided with which he sought leave from the court were fake documents. But what should surprise you and I is, why did it take this long to even confirm that a document is fake? He procured them purportedly from the Kubwa General Hospital and the Federal Staff Hospital here in Jabi. What does it take? Why would it take this number of years to basically just certify whether a document originally came out from these places or not? Because if we were proactive with these things, he had sought leave with those things, carrying out this kind of due diligence should have taken nothing. We take forever to prosecute corruptions, let's say of ₦1 billion. We end up probably even spending more than ₦1 billion to nip those in the bud. And you wonder whether the effect, is really there, because justice delayed sort of is justice denied. Because with every day you wake up, there are more issues to be looked into, more grievous maybe, more substantial, the volume even more bigger, that you begin to lose steam about something you should have nipped in. These things are about the time that these guys served in government. There had been series of administration after then. It was in the Obasanjo's era. There had been a Jonathan 5 years. There is a 6 or 7 years now 6 years of the current administration. It makes it completely uninteresting, regardless of the drama that surrounds it.
So now,
right.
His sins have not been forgiven. After all, just like many Nigerians will say.
These things don't go away easily, especially if you continue to even remain in the corridors of power. It seems like once in a while they look around and they say, no, we have not been in the news for a couple of days. We need to tinker here and shake there. And these are like low hanging fruits. They don't, for me, they don't seem to cut it, honestly. As interesting as it may seem, because he was a former minister and the kind of people that also attached to the case, like Nanedi Usman, who was a former finance minister, but that it has dragged this long has robbed it of the shine.
Okay, now let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look at more stories on the program.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, thank you for staying with us. It's Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital, and we are looking at the stories that made the headlines today when we have Sunday Michael, Deputy Business Editor, Daily Trust newspaper, in the studio to review the stories with us. Now, one other story that got my attention on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper is the one talking about the bill to end HND degree dichotomy. I think that we have been having this conversation for as long as I can remember, and it seemed to be stalled somehow. Is this really a problem, and why do we need to urgently look into this?
Funny, yeah, we've been having it for a while. It was a challenge for me some 21 years ago while I was having my HND program. And it has always been there. At every point in time, it looked like we are going to fix this, then we end up not fixing it. We are a country fixated on empty ego, really. What's the essence of setting up a structure if you don't want to recognize it anyway? And the people we seem to have borrowed this whole culture from had modified, had moved on. We just ain't moving on. You have designed an educational curriculum that specified different level of competency and training. And so you said the guy in the Polytechnic is a hands-on person. So he goes and trains on how to do certain things with his hands by himself, rather than just concentrating on the theories. And then he comes out and you are finding it difficult to recognize the same skills that you have certified by your own laws. It's funny. Or that he gets into the civil service and you say because he's not holding a different kind of certification, he's pegged. That is regardless of his outcome or input or excellence on the job. You peg him. And so why people basically then look at what they are holding as something that limits them rather than open up the opportunity for them. In my own case, I had an HND with a 2-1. Then I'm forced to go back to university and do a BSc I really never needed, that never gave me any extra knowledge other than what I had, just simply because I didn't want somebody to look down on me. And even prior to that, I've done an MBA and MSc, coming tops in my class with an HND knowledge, and yet it's a problem in a workspace by somebody else who doesn't even understand the kind of training that I have got. So the efforts have been here and there. Some persons come, give it momentum. At other point, it's just like with the difficulty we had with the Nigerian Law School, finding it difficult to recognize results issued by open universities. When all of the lawyers we had in this country, pre-independence and up to the 1970s, were sitting in these countries taking law classes in London by what they call correspondence courses. It was when they went to the law school, it was when they qualified and they got passed, they all went into, and even came tops in the law school. So is it really about sitting in the four wall of a classroom and getting somebody pass the knowledge for you, or it's about really demonstrating that you have this knowledge and you can stand up to whatever kind of scrutiny that is put before you? So we have had people who had made themselves lord onto the system, who keep beating their chest and saying, as far as we are here, these things don't happen. In other economies where we have borrowed these things, to even avoid these kind of things, they simply just change the nomenclature. So rather than call it HND, why don't you call it BTech, the Bachelor of Technology, which is the area, and then become more stringent with your supervision to ensure that the polytechnics are not offering management courses that they are not supposed to offer anyway. Leave that to the universities. Concentrate, because those are the real missing links in what we need to move this economy from where it is to another. We need to be producing. We need the industries to work. We need our technologies to compete with whatever it is outside. And if you want people to take ownership, then you must recognize them. Today, the guys in Yaba who are coming out with programs that have been bought over by players in the Silicon, who is asking them what qualifications they have? They sit on YouTube, learn programming language, design programs, and as long as it brings solutions, people are buying them off. Have we also forgotten the story of how MIT, one of the best universities, came to be? It came from a workshop, churning out tools, specific tools that were not available in the market. And because it became a specialized skills and you can't find anywhere else, they needed to recognize them in their own form. Every profession came from a crude form before it became refined and they attached some kind of certification to it. So why are we finding it difficult to transition? Well, okay. I want to commend the government again, because some agencies have also made it a duty to normalize it. The Ministry of Interior, Customs, Civil Defense and the rest have been normalizing all the people they took in on HND that they have dropped a level or 2 levels, in fact, behind their contemporaries. They've raised them up. So it's something that probably would require a bill to then force people to. There are institutions and banks, let me not name names here, that you will even see their vacancies telling you that the only thing they need is ABC and X. They don't even want people. Then they take people at that cadre, put them into contract and stagnate them for another 10, 15 years. But giving you optimum service and you run every time to declare that you are the best bank because you have the best workforce and you are making XYZ money. But people don't get commensurate remuneration for the efforts that they put in. So it's a big issue.
Now, what is dragging this bill, from coming to pass? I haven't been in the National Assembly, I believe, for years. Do you think that there's an elitist factor here that
Absolutely.
is playing?
Absolutely. How else do you describe it? All these are elites, travel everywhere. So today, if you go to Malaysia or Singapore or the UK or even Canada, you will see names like the Polytechnic University. They describe them as because that is the institution that produces middle and high-level manpower in technical skills. But if recognizing them in their form would make them feel inferior, let us change that impression in the psyche of our people, because we need that input to drive our economy. So with your HND certificate, you can proceed to your PhD programs. The roots are there, rather than making somebody feel like you have not done anything in the last 4 or 5 years, so you have to go back again and do. Do you know that in the UK, you can actually become a graduate without stepping into schools by just taking certification? So accountants can walk up into accounting firms as draftmen, and they start showing them the rudiments, on how to work on a ledger, on how to do this. And they take certification exams around those things, and they are certified. And they move on until they get an ACCA, which is the equivalent of somebody who had gone to the 4 walls of the classroom and studied back to back for 4 years to come out with the same certification. We have only used different routes to it. So the mechanic guy who shows up in the workshops and watch his master for years disassemble an engine and reassembles them and work on worn-out parts and replace them and troubleshoot a vehicle and dictate a fault and fix it back on the road, and it works perfectly. And in some cases, fabricates parts that are not readily available and fix them, and they serve. Can you honestly call that? The only difference between him is probably doesn't have skills in contract negotiation. He doesn't have the capacity to read an agreement and understand it. Basically those are the things. So if any kind of course brushes up those basic contract negotiation skills and basic literacy and numeracy, would you rather not give your car to that person than give it to somebody else who can tell you everything that happens to your car but cannot pick a spider and hit one part of it? So why are we finding it difficult to recognize that guy?
Right.
This is what this whole argument is about.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. It's been quite insightful, giving us perspectives on the show this morning. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust Television. After this quick timeout, our next guest will be in the studio. Stay with us.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, thank you for staying with us. It's Daybreak reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. Now, we move on to the next discussion on the program. And this time we're talking cholera outbreak in Nigeria. And we have joining us in the studio, Dr. Agbo Ebuta, to talk about this. Good morning, and it's good to have you join us. Thank you. All right. Now, Nigeria is seeing one of its worst cholera outbreaks in years, with more than 2,300 people dying from suspected cases as Africa's most populous country struggles to deal with multiple disease outbreaks. This year's cholera outbreak, with a higher case fatality rate than the previous 4 years, is worsened by what many consider to be a bigger priority for state governments, the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we have quite a number of suspected cases, over 100,000 in 33 states of the country, including the Federal Capital Territory. And according to the NCDC, children between 5 and 14 are the most affected age group, and the overall case fatality rate is 3.3%, more than double that of COVID-19's 1.3% case fatality rate in Nigeria. Now, to start with, how come we are having this experience that you may say is worse than what we've had in the past 4 years? What is happening?
Well, it's important to remember that there are several socioeconomic drivers of cholera, and as we speak, anybody who has cholera has come in contact with fecal matter, even in the slightest quantity. So to be as frank as possible, you may also say that anybody who has cholera may have eaten shit.
Okay. All right.
Definitely. That is as a result of the fact that safety, food safety, water safety, and open defecation at its highest. Presently, Nigeria runs very high.
Okay, so I understand from our team behind the MCR is telling us to call for a break now for some technical issues, but we'll get back to the discussion. Please stay with us to our viewers.
Well, we apologize, for that breach in technicality. We still have Dr. Agbo in the studio giving us perspectives, on the issue of cholera outbreak in Nigeria.
All right. Now, we were discussing about, causes and how, did we get here? How did we find ourselves here? So you may, as well continue with your point.
The issue is we're trying to establish is that anybody who has cholera has come in contact with feces, has actually ingested feces. Feces in the form of contaminated food or contaminated water sources, or contact with people who have had cholera and are vomiting, and so contact with the vomiters. But what is critical is that where does cholera come from? It comes mainly from feces. So people who have cholera pass out feces, and somehow this feces, loaded with cholera bacteria, finds its way to our meals or water as a result of poor hygienic practices. So it's critical to understand that. And why is it happening in Nigeria at this point in time? We need to also contextualize it against the socio-economic drivers, the socio-cultural practices, and the issues of ignorance. So if you look at the socio-cultural practices, open defecation is a major problem. You have millions of Nigerians engaged in this activity. The FCT, some of the suburbs in the FCT, it represents a major problem. Some people build facilities, housing facilities, without a proper arrangement for the sites for defecation. Most of our public toilets are in a state of disrepair. Most of our public facilities, markets, and places where people congregate in large amounts do not have a public toilet facility to cater for the people who would want to relieve themselves. So that is an issue. So you find a lot of Nigerians defecating in the open. In some villages in our local communities, that practice is still very common. So anywhere you have people defecating in the open, it is a platform for easy dissemination of contaminated feces. And at a point where we have cholera now, it's an easy means of transmission. So these contaminated feces finds their way to food, to water, and are distributed. Now, the issue of poor personal hygiene is also very critical. So anybody who has cholera may have drank water that is contaminated. And if the person is able to decontaminate that water by boiling or by use of certain chemicals, chlorination, it will reduce the cholera load in the water, and to a large extent would cut the source from water. When it comes to food, has to do with food preparations. It has to do with hand hygiene, which are also critical. At the public health level, we cannot discuss control of cholera without looking at critically open defecation, which continues to be a major problem. The Public Health Department of the FCT, when I had the privilege to be part of that discussion, it was one of the issues that I found interesting, that oh wow, so we still have this as a major problem. Nigeria is listed almost as number 1 in open defecation in the world. That tells you that we have a fertile ground for the transmission of gastrointestinal diseases like cholera and the rest.
Okay. You know, many would say Nigeria has been battling, cholera for decades.
Absolutely.
And we are still doing that.
Yes.
Where did we get it wrong?
We got it wrong because we do not have the structure in place. So the factors are several. Number 1 is, as we said, a proper disposal of fecal matter, both in public and in private places. So we should have very clear laws about that. If you are building a public institution where you have a large number of people congregating, you should have a proper toilet facility for defecation and hand hygiene after that. But what we experience is that even in facilities that have these toilet facilities, there is a problem with hygiene, because there are some people who do not want to use public toilet facilities because they are dirty to a large extent. And some people may just feel more comfortable with even going to the bush where they can defecate. So that's for toilet facilities. The other issue is that we do not have a comprehensive water policy that has been implemented. So in most places, in most rural areas, even in urban areas, we do not have public water works, functional public water works that cater for the water needs of the population. So everybody, most people, have to make arrangements for their own water supply. You have people digging boreholes, you have people going to water water bodies to fetch water, you have people contracting tankers to supply them. Now, if you do that, you cannot control the safety of that water to a large extent.
All right. Now, in regards to that,
Yes.
you have communities where, like you mentioned, people rely on boreholes.
Absolutely.
For their source of drinking
Yes.
water and all of that. Is that safe, given the fact that
it-
you have other neighborhoods, where people have
Absolutely.
toilets, and
Absolutely.
soccerways and everywhere.
I mean, you've hit the nail at the head. If you have a borehole, there are certain guidelines that you must follow. That borehole must not be within 30 meters of a toilet facilities, an underground toilet facility, because of underwater, surface water contamination. So that's a veritable source. Apart from that, open wells, which are also common, should have leads and should be properly covered. If not, they can serve as a source of contamination. But allow me to retract back a bit to a point you clearly stated, that we have 100,000 suspected cases. Let me embellish that a bit. For every case you see that has symptoms, let me assure you that there are 4 other cases that do not have symptoms. Yes, so cholera, 75% to 80% of patients who have cholera would not have any symptoms, but they will be transmitting this condition. So let me say that for the 100,000 cases that were suspected to be cholera, we potentially have had 500,000 Nigerians who have cholera in their body, in their intestine, and they are passing it and they are transmitting it. This is important because it is a major cause of morbidity, meaning that people fall ill, they need medical care, and it's a bit, it is an intensive treatment, because out of 100 people who would have cholera infection, let me say about 5% will have severe cholera and will require intensive treatment. I've been involved in caring for patients very recently, and I can assure you that it's cost intensive, requires input from well-trained physicians to manage such patients. Sometimes you have to give patients liters and liters of IV infusions to make sure they don't dehydrate. You have to start antibiotics occasionally very early. If not, it's of no use. Then you have to correct what we call electrolytes in the body, because that's a major cause of morbidity.
Okay, now, how is this cholera transmitted, among people, and what should people be looking out for to protect themselves?
Excellent. How is it transmitted? It is transmitted, it's a bacteria. It's a tiny bacteria. You cannot see it with your eyes. It's comma-shaped. It has a flagella. It has a long tail. So what happens is that a patient who has cholera in their intestine would pass it out in stool or would vomit it, and it would now contaminate the immediate environment. If you have food growing around that environment, like vegetables, you go, you harvest it, and probably did not clean it properly, and you prepare maybe salad or something, it's not well cooked, or in the process of preparing the food, the patient who has cholera but does not have symptoms have gone to the toilet, has not washed his or her hands well, and comes to prepare food. Or you go to a nearby water body to fetch water to drink, and you take it and you boil, and you do not boil it, or you do not chlorinate it sufficiently. These are all sources. So once the person who is to be infected drinks or eats from that source, within 5 hours to 5 days, the person may develop symptoms.
This becomes very difficult, really, because, for some of our viewers who are watching,
Yes.
if you go to the market to buy vegetables,
Yes.
there's nothing written on it saying this has
Absolutely.
some cholera
Absolutely.
on it.
Absolutely.
So what should Nigerians do, and what should people do?
Every-
when you go to the market to buy, vegetables and
Okay,
and things like that.
everybody has a role to play. Since we are talking about prevention, a certain component of prevention. The people who prepare these vegetables may do well to wash them. If you go abroad, for example, or to maybe some of our very nice shops, like all the nice shops, the major big shops, you see how the vegetables are. They look really neat and nice. But if you go to our typical market, the orange in our market is dirty. But the orange in one of these shops, I'm not allowed to talk of the names of the shop, I believe, because
The
of
supermarkets,
yeah, that's marketing. But if you go, you look, the apples really look nice. But if you go to our traditional markets, the apples look dirty because dirt is on them. The potato looks nice in these shops, but in our markets, the potato looks dirty
Sandy.
because we have not taken the. So our market women need to be educated that even before they sell their product, they can wash it, they can keep it clean. But that's on the market woman side. What of on the buyer? If you buy a product, you cannot depend on the seller to maintain hygiene. Once you take it home, you're supposed to wash it properly. And if you have to cook it before you eat it, you have to cook it properly. Because partially cooked food, meals, are a possible source. Uncooked meals are a possible source. And when you come in contact with those things, you have to also maintain hand hygiene. That's for food.
Right.
When it comes to water, we must understand that we talk of table water, bottled water, packet waters and all. Are they potable? Are they healthy? Are they hygienic? We know that even fake drug is a problem in our country. Significant issue. How much more fake table water? How much more fake sachet water? So when you get table waters and sachet waters, you should be wary. From where you get them in the first place, you should be wary. I've had a colleague who, it is a bit anecdotal, but it's important. I'd had a colleague who bought a bottled water, and within 6 hours, he was already stooling seriously. So some of the water sources, public water sources we purchase, may not be completely safe because some unscrupulous Nigerians may have just gone somewhere and just filled up these containers and proceeded to sell them in the market without ensuring that they are treated. But we do have plants in Nigeria, water plants in Nigeria, who treat their water very well. So that's on the side of water. The other component, obviously, of course, is that if you notice that you took something and then you feel untoward, you are stealing, you should present early, because one of the interventions that allows you to save patients is an early recognition and diagnosis. So what we call high index of suspicion is that you see a patient stooling seriously, a large amount of stool, you should suspect critically that, oh, this could be cholera. And even before you go on to confirm, if you have the facilities, you should institute treatment. Then on the other side, in terms of some form of intervention, on the other side, at the health worker level, health workers, from time to time, you need updates, you need revisions, you need retraining, because when cholera intensity goes down, information awareness about cholera also drops. So during the periods like this, when you have a spike in cases, it behoves on the health institutions, the bodies who are responsible, to organize accessible trainings which will allow for wide dissemination of information to health workers to prepare them for this situation and to say, look, this is cholera, just like a revision. You get with the technology, with the kind of technology we have now, you do not need to organize real-time one-to-one trainings. You could do some training models and share to every health worker who has a phone in their hand, to re-educate them, to retrain them, and to update them on the current tenets or information on how to identify and manage patients with cholera. So it is several. But looking at it long term, we've had cholera and cholera would come. We can almost predict that before 2030, we would have 1 or 2 cases of outbreaks of cholera. So what should government do? What should organized private sector do? What should corporate organizations do? They can, to a large extent, on one end, increase access to safe water. Increasing access to safe water means that government must take deliberate action to provide public water works for sizable populations, adapted for them. So you need to do massive pipe-borne water. You get, not that everybody has to put a borehole in their house. Central treatment of water in organized society, that's what happens. These are expensive, but they are big projects. But the fact about it is that imagine that you have safe water for everybody in a locality. Let's say in a township of about 500,000 people, you have safe water taking care of them. You have already removed waterborne diseases from contamination, things like cholera, things like typhoid, things like Shigella, things like E. coli. All those infections that are borne, that are transmitted through unsafe water, would significantly go down. Access to water would mean that people would be able to maintain hygiene. That would also cut down. So public policy can, on just providing water, safe water, can significantly shift the intensity of certain infections that are. The second thing, obviously, is education. We have in certain localities, education is illiteracy is as much as 60 to 80%. That is significant. An uneducated person is not empowered. He or she may not have. In fact, the lower your literacy level, the higher your chances of getting cholera and dying from cholera. Because if you are illiterate, you would not understand what hand hygiene, you would not even have access to information that are disseminated in English or for targeted mainly on literate people and all that. You may be poor, you may not even have access to medications, access to organized healthcare, access to insurance and all that. So education is critical. We must find a way to reach our people. And how can we reach them in a cost-effective manner? You have mosques in almost every part of this country. Imagine we educate all the imams in all the mosques, and every Friday they pray, they sing, they give their interdictions, their preaching, and then they talk a little about hand hygiene, they talk a little about water safety, they talk a little about food safety. You can imagine how you empower the public. Imagine doing that in all the churches on Sunday. So we have 200 million people. I can almost guarantee you, I think there's a study that showed that over 90% of Nigerians believe in God, and belong to a religious body, and attend, and over 70 or so attend a religious gathering from time to time. So imagine disseminating that information to 70% of Nigerians. That's 140 million Nigerians. Imagine that half of that number take up this information and put it in practice. That's about 70 million Nigerians. I can guarantee you that a lot of people still do not know what cholera is. When they see people passing watery stool, they assume a lot of things and all of that, and what to do. Sometimes there is a component of care we call self-care, first aid and self-care. You do not need to be a doctor to institute self-care, first aid. So if a patient is already stooling seriously, you can just do what the table water, the salt, sugar solution, which is easy to do. And you can start replacing fluid intensively while you transport this patient to the hospital. But these are things that, rather than just wait and say, oh, well, let's wait until we get to the hospital and this patient is stooling large amount of stool, and this patient is progressing from dehydration to severe dehydration and even kidney complications and all of that, increasing the cost and the intensity of care subsequently.
You know, I've been meaning to ask this question.
Yes,
know,
please.
earlier I spoke about, boiling our water, before we consume them. Does boiling water really take away all the germs?
I would say it takes away 99% of the germs.
Oh.
Why do I say that? Because there are certain germs that are encysted. So in toxic environment, these germs they generate a coat around themselves, and somehow you cannot. But I mean, if you take out 99% of the germs, you are mostly home and dry,
Right.
to a large extent. Yes, boiling water is critical. In fact, this is also an anecdotal story. I have a gentleman who I consider like a father. He used to have recurrent abdominal problems, infection and all that. And he found out that, look, I don't eat outside. I take table water. What's going on? So he sorted out his kitchen part, and that was hygiene, did training for his people. He still had that. And then what he started doing was he started boiling table water. And since then, he has not had any yet. So that really tells you that boiling water is critical. In fact,
so no matter how clean
Yes,
you
yes,
may
yes.
presume the water to be,
if you
Just
if
boil
it is
it.
bought,
if you have the opportunity to boil the water,
Just boil.
please boil it. If you boil it, there would be no opportunity for guesswork. There will be no maybe not. You would have eliminated that chance. There's also an interesting science called photodisinfection. So photodisinfection is something that is practiced in certain parts of Southern Africa. You put your water in a transparent bottle and you keep it in the sun for a couple of hours, 6 to 8 hours. That under the sun has the capacity to disinfect the water. So it cuts down the viral load. If there's a viral infection, it cuts down the bacterial load. But again, that is not something that is very commonly practiced because it's not an information that is out there and all that. And it requires some cooperation where, imagine fetching water and keeping under the sun for 8 hours. Some people, you would need to explain that properly to them, for them to
Sounds
know,
insane.
yeah, so you need to explain that properly. So these are all options and possibilities. But in terms of cholera, if everybody was able to dispose of their feces in a safe manner, there will be no cholera.
Now, let's briefly, in 1 minute, talk about that. I think about a week ago or so, we had an officer from the Environmental Officers Registration Council, talking about the implementation of some of the laws that we have around, these environmental issues. Do you think that we have a problem with the law, or with the problem is with implementation and making sure that those found wanting, like people engaging in open defecation, you know, have some kind of consequences.
I think the law that is actually being practiced or being implemented or that is in place right now is a beta cake. I do not have the full information, but I'm aware that even the fines are at the pre-colonial level. Imagine open defecation and they're asking you to pay fines of a few hundreds. It should be reviewed. And I'm sure that, yes, the Environmental Council people, they are working on a law to update it and then pass it on, probably as a bill, and then it gets to an act level. That requires some readjustment, recalibration. I know there's a deficit there. But however, above and beyond that, even the present law, as deficient as it is, as outdated as it is not being implemented. Not really a fault of anybody in particular, but the whole fact that the recruitment, they do not have the manpower. Abuja, for example, is one of the fastest growing locations in Africa. So you have, those days from what we heard, I wasn't born at that, I wasn't aware about what was happening, but I hear that environmental inspection officers would come to your house and inspect your house for hygiene, food safety, water safety, and all of that. I don't think I've experienced that.
You don't have that.
You don't see
Not
that.
even at
see
intervals.
that.
Yeah, I mean, so that is definitely an issue. But for you to do that in the FCT, to environmentally police maybe 6 million people thereabout in the FCT, you will need a sizable workforce. You will need the logistics to back this workforce. You will need the wherewithal, the coordination to back. We do not have this in place. I can tell you that for free. So for us to discuss that, we must look at what we need to put in place, the cost efficiency of that, and how we allocate resources to all of these needs in a way that we can make the impact that we want to make.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
It's a pleasure.
We hope to have you next time.
Absolutely.
All right. We've been speaking with Dr. Abo Ebuta. He is a medical practitioner, and very, very interesting issues there you raised with us. And for our viewers, I hope that you've learned a thing or two, in this discussion. Now, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at yet another discussion on the program. Please stay with us.
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you live from our studios here in the nation's capital city, Abuja. It's now time for us to kickstart the second discussion segment on the program. Now, young Nigerians make up the largest population of the growing flow of migrants from Africa to developed countries. In 2016, over 20,000 involved in the Mediterranean Sea crossing were reported to be from Nigeria. In addition, from 2017 until late 2019, hundreds of Nigerian migrants were deported from various destinations, including Italy, Libya, and South Africa. These young people embark on very risky journeys across the globe, and casualties continue to increase daily.
All right, now we will be taking a discussion now, and we have in the studio Josiah Emerole, Director of Public Enlightenment, NAPTIP, in the studio to give us perspectives on these recent happenings. Good morning, and it's good to have you join us.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now, this is, of course, it's no longer news, or I would say everybody is now concerned about this issue of illegal migration all over the world, not just Africa. How much of a problem is it for us here in Nigeria?
Well, I would first of all say that we talk about irregular migration and not really illegal migration, because irregular migration is now the professional word for what we used to call illegal migration. But having said that, it's important to note that issue of irregular migration by Nigerians is quite huge, and it has also become an embarrassment to the people and government of Nigeria, because those illegal movements or irregular movements are very dangerous in nature. Just like you said earlier, many people have died on their way to Europe using those illegal routes and illegal means of movement. And why is it huge? It is huge because everybody wants to improve his or her well-being, the well-being of his or her family, and some feel that we can't make it here. And they are anxious, they are eager to jump into any promise that comes along the way. And many people also, apart from difficulties they may have had, some of them also feel that we cannot make it here. We need to move out. We need to move out. It doesn't matter how we move out. Their own is that there must be a grass that is greener out there than what I am seeing right now. But in that situation, they are ready, or they become vulnerable to any type of promise. They become vulnerable to any type of window that shows that you could move. And that is why traffickers jump at them, because they see that this person wants to go. He feels that there's nothing here for him or her. So we can grab this one. Smugglers of migrants also capitalize on that and begins to make offers on how they can help you to get over to the other side, where you want to go to. Because you see, there's this erroneous belief among our young people that the streets of Europe, the streets of America, even the streets of Togo, which is by the way here, that when you go there, you pick up foreign currencies I know this value of foreign currency in Nigeria has also become a major problem for us. Where somebody brings in $1 into Nigeria, it becomes big money. So our people, everybody wants to go out to get it. But unfortunately for them, many of them have perished. Many families have lost their loved ones who have embarked on these dangerous journeys to nowhere, journeys to what you cannot even explain.
All right. Now, from the records available to you, are we experiencing an increase or a decrease of this irregular migration? And what are some of the factors fueling this?
Well, I will not say that there's a decrease. I have just painted a picture to you, a picture of the fact that many people feel that the grass over there is greener. Many people feel that job opportunities are not here. Many people believe that even that they are underemployed. What they are even paid cannot take them home. So, and they have seen people who have traveled. They have seen some who have made it. Made it in the sense that, yes, they have come. There's an improvement in the lives of the families of those people. Even though some of them too, when they come with their last savings. And they come here and do a kind of show for people to see that they have done well. And because they have seen some of these things, they want to also go. So, I would say that irregular migration in Nigeria has not decreased. And I can assure you it's not going to decrease in the very nearest future. So long as people want to keep moving. And remember, migration is the right of everybody. Right. Migration is the right of everybody. But what we are saying, if you want to migrate, migrate right. If you want to migrate, migrate for the right reasons. Don't just migrate because you heard people are moving. Then you begin to pursue people who are criminally minded, who want to collect your money to take you to whichever country. And when they take you there, they abandon you and you run into the hands of traffickers. Or because your desperation, your family desperation, traffickers now arrive to your home to show you that they can help you better your life.
Okay. You know, from the scenario you just painted now, it seems like Nigerians do not have the proper education, you know, in pursuing the right channel to migrate legally. Is that so?
Well, I will say yes and I will say no. Well, on the area of no, there are lots of awareness creation out there. For instance, NAPTIP, the agency I represent, has always gone to various locations in this country propagating this gospel of migrating right. Propagating this gospel of don't fall into the hands of traffickers because of your desperation to make it. Nigeria Immigration Service, which is also the agency, you know, mandated to deal with issues of migration. They are in every part of this country, talking to all people too. And they have done a great job too in creating this awareness. But are the people listening? The people are not listening. They think that so person has gone and he has made it. I too, I will also go there and I will make it. We are very religious. Everybody believes that if this other person didn't make it, it is his own cup of tea. My own, I will make it. My God is one that answers by fire. And when I call him, he will answer me and he will take me there. But that is also not the way to reason about some of these things. Now, on the other hand, there can be also an improvement in whatever awareness creation that we are raising. Everybody has to come together to raise this awareness on migrating rights. The people who want to migrate, you want to migrate, yes, is your right. Why don't you also go and find out how you can migrate right? I told you, Immigration Service has offices in every local government of this country. If anybody walks into any of those offices, they can ask questions. I want to travel. What and what do I need to be able to go? They will be able to tell you the documents that you need. They will be able to tell you some of the problems in various countries, especially where you want to go to. Our people, they wake up, they want to travel. They go to all these Asian countries. And before you know it, they're also carrying drugs. When you make such inquiry, they will tell you, these are the laws against drugs in so country. If you go there, it is death. If you carry drugs, it is death. But we do not want to do those things. Apart from the victims of trafficking, who from the beginning are being deceived, being lured from their comfort zones in the name of trying to help them. But the people who want to be smuggled out at all costs, especially the youths, they are not interested in asking questions. That is why they get involved in all these dangerous journeys. And Nigeria is the loser, because not only are we losing our young people, the image of the country is also at stake. And many people who have traveled, genuinely, they know what they go through in the hands of border securities when they go abroad. Because you are in Nigeria, you are carrying a green passport, they know what they go through. And it is not good for us.
Now, every now and then on social media, for instance, we see videos, that sometimes go viral on social media about Nigerians in other countries that are suffering, one form of dehumanizing treatment or the other and all of that. How much of this irregular migration is a problem to NAPTIP in dealing with, say, bringing those Nigerians back, to the country and all of that?
Thank you for that. When I said Nigeria is suffering from all of this, this is the type of thing we are talking about. We are not talking about the lives that are being lost. We are not talking about the image. We are also talking about spending scarce resources, bringing back Nigerians who did not listen and who embarked on those dangerous journeys. You see down here some unscrupulous elements in the name of travel agents here collude with their colleagues out there, especially Asian countries, Middle East countries, in the name of labor recruiters. If you check some of those things, these are young men and women who said they went to so place to work. And this is now what is happening. That what they are now seeing is not what they were promised. Now, the agents here collude with the agent over there, and they say there's a job. And they move with these people. After signing all manner of papers, they get visas. This set of people we are talking about, they go by air. They get visas to those countries in the name of going there to work as a domestic servant, as an attendant in one business or the other, and what have you. And the next thing, you now discover that they are just being taken there for sexual exploitation. Even as they are doing the domestic work, the oga of the house is also sexually exploiting the child or the person. You are calling your agent here. This is what is happening to me. He said, yes, you have to do your job. Meanwhile, the money is also not coming to you. The agent here is collecting the money and sharing with the other. And when you begin to say you want to go back, they'll tell you, no, we have paid so amount of money for your service. So, except you are going to return that money, you cannot go. All manner of things, violence come into it. And any opportunity that person now has to shout out through the social media, they begin to shout out. And Nigeria, as a country, being a responsible one, will not keep quiet. Agencies of government will have to rise to the occasion to see how they can bring back these people. So, a lot of money is being spent trying to trace these people first of all, and then arranging to helping them to return to Nigeria. And it doesn't end there. When you even help them to return, you have to begin to factor in how to reintegrate them into society, how to rehabilitate them so that they can live like normal human beings. And it is also money, the scarce resources that we are talking about. So, when we talk about people traveling for the right reasons, we are doing that to avoid this situation, this scenario that I'm painting. Because a lot of it, they are there. And we have continued to say, the embassies of some of those countries that are here, for goodness sake, work with agencies of government before you give visa to some of these people. You give a visa to somebody who cannot even speak Arabic or even write it to go to a place like Saudi.
All right.
So,
You understand?
yes.
And I have seen some people, I'm an Igbo man, I have seen some people who are from my place. In the course of this, we intercepted them. At the course of this, you now begin to ask, you only speak Igbo language and some English. So how do you intend to communicate when you get there? So it's a problem.
Okay. Now, would you say, the economic adversity Nigeria is facing is a driver, of irregular migration?
You see, irregular migration across the world is economic reasons that is actually driving it, and Nigeria is not an exception. So you cannot say be only Nigeria across the world, because what is everybody looking for? Economic benefit to enhance their living standard. As I'm talking to you, there are also foreigners who are in Nigeria, who came into Nigeria. Some of them are trafficked victims who were also brought here. What is it that also brought those people or made them to be brought here? Economic reasons. So, economic reason is a driver.
Okay, now you talked about these travel agents,
Yes.
and I would like for us to talk about them further. Who monitors these travel agents to certify their legitimacy? And what kind of collaboration do we see, say between NAPTIP and the various Nigerian embassies in, some of these countries as well?
Well, talking about the travel agencies, about on labor recruitment is the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment that regulates those who are into labor recruitment. When I say travel agents, I'm not talking about all of them. There are those who have gone into labor recruitment for foreign countries. And these ones are the ones that the Ministry of Labor and Employment regulates. Unfortunately, many others have also gone into labor recruitment without also not going to the Ministry of Labor to get registered or to get licensed. And even those that have been licensed have also joined the others to get into illegal activities. Because there are rules, there are procedures that are put on ground on how these people should recruit these people and send them. But many of them are not following it. But I think that what needs to be done, which we in NAPTIP have always talked about, is to ensure that these people are regulated more than being done presently. Secondly, our security agencies at various entry and exit points need to up their games, because it shouldn't be anybody who comes with a passport, with travel document, you now say, yes, this person, because he has this, he should go. We need to think deeper, ask deeper questions, because we have seen some people that we have intercepted, and by the time they come, somebody will tell you that he or she is going to India. You now ask, what are you going there to do? The person doesn't know what he's going there to do. Who are you going to meet? The person tells you that. That's true. By the time we begin to investigate, they'll tell you that I was told that when I get there, I should call this person in Nigeria, who will now call somebody who will come and pick me. We've seen people who have said they are going there for surgery. By the time we conduct search on this person does not have one single foreign currency. Then who is going to pay? You can't get any answer. Now, what is NAPTIP doing? What is the relationship with NAPTIP, between NAPTIP and the regulators? For us, we maintain very robust relationship with the Ministry of Labor, Immigration Service, the Customs, and all the people over there. But the fact is that those people need to do more, because most times we, NAPTIP, are on the receiving end. Because when it happens, Nigerians are shouting, NAPTIP, what are you people doing there? What are you people doing there? We are not at the exit and entry points. Those people there are our eyes. We are not there because we don't want to be there. We are not there because by policy of government, those people are supposed to do the work there and send to us. Right. So they need to do more for the safety of all of us and the image of the country.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. We hope to have you next time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, very interesting conversation there with Mr. Josiah Emerole. He is the Director of Public Enlightenment at NAPTIP. Just because of our time, we have to end it here. Now, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll be wrapping up the show. Please stay with us.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Oh, Nagani.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Well, very, very interesting show today. Unfortunately, we have to end it here. For those who have missed, you can always catch up on our YouTube and also follow us across all social media handles to have, to watch the whole discussions that we had today on the program, talking about irregular migration
and
cholera outbreak in
all
Nigeria.
The
Very interesting.
Weird things about
In fact,
cholera and all of that.
for the cholera, especially the cholera, is very scary. Some of the revelations by the medical practitioner that joined us earlier to talk about that. But like I said, you can catch up in case you have missed. With that, we wrap up the show. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ayuba Ilia.
And I'm Zainab Bala. Thank you so much for staying with us.